Dr. Ryder review.
Hey YouTube, Dr. Ryder here. Welcome to my review for the penultimate episode of Power Rangers Beast Morphers Season 2. This was the big episode. It revealed that Evox and Venjix are one and the same. So now it's out there for those of you that somehow miraculously avoided the spoilers. I mean, this was practically a twist that was spoiler when Go Busters first came out, because it was initially all the things people wanted to see when we first saw the Go Busters suits, like, oh, RPM sequel. So it was almost like a precursor way back in 2012, but still, you know, it was a lot of people saw it coming, a lot of people had the theory, but I know that there was some people that somehow managed to avoid the spoilers, so now I can finally say it. I'll have to see if I can find the bloopers to release somewhere, but there was a couple times when I was recording reviews for these US reviews where I accidentally called Evox Venjix a couple times, and I had to stop and re-record that sentence because I caught myself since I got so used to it. But yes, Evox and Venjix are one and the same. They had Evox trapped in the base, and then he gets let loose. And I'm going to mention this again for this airing, but I thought it was dumb that they just kept trying to blow up stuff where Evox was. Especially someone that's supposed to be smart like Nate. Again, I mentioned this again in the international airing, so if you're watching both, I know I'm repeating myself, but it reminded me of that scene in Parks and Rec when Ron smashes his phone and Donna says, "That won't stop hackers," because it was really just dumb logic. But Evox gets loose, and it turns out the reason he wanted to be in the base is because he wanted to go into the Ranger Vault, and he needed to get the RPM Morphers to connect with the rest of his code to complete himself. So he is Venjix, he is the Knight, no. So Nate was responsible for it. So what ended up happening was years ago when little prodigy Nate, that looked more badass than regular Nate now, was working on Morphers and the Ranger program and mixing with animal DNA, he was having a hard time until he got to the RPM Morphers and he combined snake DNA with it, which wound up inadvertently creating Evox because Venjix was in there and it allowed Evox to get in there and escape, which also explains how Evox was in Grid Battle Forces systems or whatever at the beginning of the series. And so that's what happened. But it wasn't his full code. It's like Evox is a fragment of Venjix in a way. And like a lot of people were upset like about this twist because they felt Evox was a much dumber, less cool villain. And I agree in a lot of ways, but that kind of explains it, you know, that he was kind of a fragment of it and now he's complete with it. And, you know, even though this was something people saw coming a mile away, and I don't think everything involving it is perfect, I still thought this was pretty cool. You know, connecting it to that previous season, connecting it to that cliffhanger. It is kind of weird because, I hate to use this word, but RPM was more of a little bit more of a serious season, much more back when Power Rangers wasn't 2 to 6 year olds talking down. So it is kind of weird to have a side sequel with Beast Morphers. You know, it's like following up a sequel cliffhanger with a Barney show. And so it is a little bit weird. And there's some tonal discrepancies that rise out of it when you think about it overall. It's like, oh my god, it's a side sequel to RPM, but they did It's Great to Be Human. So, I don't know, there is some weird stuff with that, but I do like the idea behind it. I like the idea that they wanted to do it. Like, the idea that he mixed the snake DNA with him, and that's what created it, is kind of cool, because then the Rangers' powers are based off of mixing DNA, and I thought that was kind of neat. And, you know, why would Dr. K give up the tech for the vault? Who knows? I kind of wish that would have been said. Because I felt like there was always a possibility some of this stuff was just copies. But obviously it was the original Morpher because that's the one Venjix escaped into. But still, it was kind of cool to see that happen and to see some flashbacks. And apparently it's the same voice actor and I had no idea, but he's using his regular Venjix voice then. And so that was pretty cool there. But then you have Nate feeling guilty, like, Chris, they got our gifts. But that's his expression every episode. He always looks like he's about to start crying like any second. But he's feeling guilty, and so they bring Dr. K back to give him a pep talk. And there was also some people that said that they didn't like Dr. K in this and thought she felt off. You know, of all the problems and nitpicks I could have about this story and everything in the episode, I thought Dr. K was done very well. I mean, she was very well, if you know what I mean. I thought her character felt right. I mean, maybe not perfect. Maybe if this was back in the Disney era day or something, I still prefer the gazillion half of RPM, but it would have been a little bit different. But I thought that her performance was right, and the character dialogue and stuff felt right, and the advice she gave felt right. Especially since you consider that this is like over 10 years later, or 10 years later, give or take. So it felt like a mature version of Dr. K. It felt right. Her mannerisms felt right, and she also had some funny bits with Ben and Betty, like sending them on a wild goose chase, and the way she handled them also felt right. So I'm not saying it was perfect, but for me, I liked it. I didn't think it was very off. And I liked just the general idea of Nate feeling like he made a similar mistake and her counseling him, even though I don't think Nate's storyline is anywhere near comparable to hers, and his reaction to it as well. I think Dr. K's is one of the most surprising and interesting and cool in all of PR, and Nate's is like a ant compared to it. But I do like the idea of it. And I think there was some cool stuff with it, and they wound up working on this new tech together with the bow that wound up destroying Robo-Blaze, and that was the end of him because that was, you know, the test of the tech, and then Evox is gearing up for the final battle at the end. Kind of a quick end for Robo-Blaze, but he kind of had his moment to shine last week. Like Fossil Frenzy was Robo-Roxy's moment to shine before she got blown up, and this was his. But this wasn't a perfect episode, but I thought it was a really cool episode, and it was cool to see some connections between seasons. I'm not quite sure if that makes the show overall good. We'll get to that later in some more series reviews, but I thought this episode was really cool, even if it wasn't the most surprising twist. But what did you guys think? If you'd managed to avoid the spoilers, were you surprised by this? Or even if you managed to avoid it, did you still see this coming from a mile away? Let me know in the comments as usual. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can catch my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.